Zoom as well. Hope this all goes as planned. This is my second one on that I did both on Zoom, which was cool. So I actually would love to be able to start this podcast with a story
Yes.
that you're involved in. Because otherwise, what's the fucking point, right? That's good. Like people on my podcast tell them a story, say thank you and fuck off. Yeah, thanks for listening to my story. So you got me into this movie to see the premiere of, I can't remember, was it Jimmy in Miami?
I can't remember what city he was at, but it was a Jimi Hendrix movie.
Yeah, it was a documentary about Jimi Hendrix. And so I'm sitting there, and then at the end of my aisle sits down Dweezil Zappa, who I've met a couple of times, and it is always, and no matter what I say to him, he says one or two words, and that's it. He's polite, but does not engage. It's been very interesting, and I've met him a couple times over the decades. But I happen to know that he has his father's guitar that he got from Jimmy's Tech that was lit on fire, I think at the Miami show. And I said to him jokingly, did you bring the Stratocaster, the Jimmy? And he kind of smiled and said, oh no. And then that was it. So then I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, his babysitter walks in. And I don't know how many people know this, but Pamela DeBars was his babysitter, and she sits in front of me, but they don't say hello. And I'm like, I'm sitting next to Dweezil, a few things away, and his babysitter from his childhood is sitting right in front of me. And that was just a fucking surreal moment for me. And I felt like, am I the only one that knows this?
I think they had talked before the movie, because I met Dweezil. I'd never met him before. I knew the director, John McDermott, and so John got me the tickets and everything, and so that was the first time I had ever met Dweezil, but yeah, Pamela was right there. But yeah, I think they talked before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that explains everything to me.
But I love it. You're a Libra. You want to make sure everyone's okay.
Yeah, right.
Along.
I'm like, did they have a falling out or something?
No.
Okay, great. That's so funny. What a cool world that we live in, where, like you can connect the dots at just like sitting in some theater with somebody.
Yeah. And then as I was waiting to go in, they wouldn't let Eddie Kramer in. Eddie Kramer forgot his ticket or something. And so he's running around and he's trying to convince everybody that he's going to take part in the Q&A because he's Eddie Kramer, but they don't care. They're like, I don't know.
Eddie who? Like, right.
Let Eddie get in.
Right.
Save Eddie.
He was involved in the movie beyond the Q&A? Obviously, Eddie Kramer, for anyone listening who doesn't know, was Jimmy's engineer. I don't know if he produced anything with Jimmy, but he was certainly the engineer on most, and also built Electric Ladyland, the studio in New York with him.
And worked with Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, and Kiss.
Yes.
Right. And I think he did the Kiss live album, and I think he did their demo before they got signed. And then they always talk about their regrets that he didn't do the other albums, and that's why they were more, they felt like their first three albums were kind of a failure, and then they brought him in to do the live album, which was a success. But yeah, Eddie's great, because it's turning into the Jimi Hendrix podcast. So you are Amy Pickard. Amy, I can call you Amy Captain Picard.
I've never heard that one before. No, it's actually Pickard.
There you go.
It's not as fancy in French as people think, but I'm fine as long as people are cool. They can call me whatever they want.
As a dyslexic, is Pickard and Picard spelled the same?
It is. Well, Picard doesn't have a K in it, like Captain Jean-Luc Picard. There's
Yes.
no K. I spell my last name with the K, but it was definitely made me look twice when I saw Picard billboards all over LA. It was kind of like, wait a minute, put a K
Right.
in there, but everybody always says, "Oh, are you related to Jean-Luc?"
And you
I
say,
wish.
yeah, of
I
course.
wish. I wish I could get a ride on a spaceship. Come on, man. Take
That's
me
what we
out.
need. Yeah, right now. I'm ready to
Beam me.
leave.
I know. Beam me the fuck up.
Beam me out of this motherfucker. So, as the owner of Good to Go, what is your title besides CEO or whatever? But like if you want to break it down, you're not a facilitator of a will.
No.
Um,
Um, no, I run an advanced planning company, which I just help people get their advanced planning paperwork together, but not the legal way. I say that I'm not a doctor and I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a person that's lived through the deaths of my whole family in a very short period of time, 4 years. And I decided to help people in their grief by letting them know it's really important to get your advanced planning sorted out. And so I made this little booklet called the Departure File, and it basically includes all the everyday logistics that people don't think of or don't think of leaving behind in case of an emergency or death. And so my official title, I mean, some people call me a death concierge.
right.
Uh, uh, I prefer vibe coordinator, but that doesn't sound too professional. But I guess I'm just an advanced planning facilitator.
I like Death Concierge.
Yeah, I don't mind being like the concierge and letting you know what's going to happen and all that stuff. So I mean, it's pretty true. And I call the departure file the cosmic instruction manual.
Right. That's what are people most confused about?
Confused, I don't think there's so much well, I think people are confused about what advanced planning actually is, and how to kind of get it together. I mean, most people think that you need a will. I think people are confused that you have to be rich in order to have a will, which isn't the case. I think everyone, if you've got belongings, if you own stuff, you should definitely have some sort of will. Even if you have a car, you can do a transfer of the title upon death, and it's going to make your loved ones' lives so much easier because they're not going to have to scramble around and have to get everything together. So I don't think people are necessarily confused about Good to Go, but they are confused about what advanced planning is and when they need it. I think people automatically think if you're a senior citizen or if you have a terminal illness that you should definitely have your advanced planning together. But I say if you're 18 and you live away from home, you need to have a living will, an advanced healthcare directive, which just explains to your loved ones, like if you were suddenly incapacitated, whether it's COVID-19 or a bicycle accident or whatever, who is going to make decisions on your behalf,
Right.
and what kind of treatments do you want and not want, and then a will, so you can go see a lawyer for an actual will. But what I help people do is just be aware of all the everyday logistics that and the millions of questions that arise when someone dies and you have to do the death duties, which is just closing out that person's paper presence in life, and then obviously figuring out funerals or life celebrations or cremation or burial and all those things. But there's just a million questions that come up when somebody dies, and I lived through it the hard way because my mom died out of the blue and didn't leave a lot of paperwork behind. And so when you're grieving, when you're in the grieving hellscape, you
Right.
know it's you need as much energy as you can muster to just focus on surviving and grappling with the cosmic questions of how you're going to live without your DNA on the planet anymore. Those things. You don't want to have to become a detective, a travel agent, an accountant, an administrator, a cleaning lady, a personal organizer, a personal assistant without the personal assistance of the person that you need. So
Right.
I think I think people. I mean, I joke that I'm trying to convince people of the peace that they don't know they're going to need. So I think people are confused about what it is and why they would need it.
Yeah, and it's not, it seems like it's not so much for you, it's for the people that are going to have to come in after the fact. And you kind
Well,
of like
yeah,
make it easy.
yeah, and I basically created it to make it easy for survivors, for loved ones. But what I realized in a crazy cosmic way was, my dad came to a good to go party a year before he died, and obviously neither of us knew he was going to die a year
Oh,
later.
yeah, but what's a good to go party? Because everyone's like, what did she just say?
Oh, right, a good to go party. Oh, I had to think of a way to kind of get the departure file across to people and get this information out there. But I didn't want to do it in a stuffy way. When people go to get their wills done, they dress up, they go to an office, it's very intimidating of a lawyer, and they were talking about all these heavy things. And I'm, an extrovert, and I've got a sense of humor, and I cuss a lot, and I love rock and roll. And I thought, well, why don't I just bring the Amy to it, And so I decided to have advanced planning parties, and I have a rock and roll death theme soundtrack that I play with like Queen, Another One Bites the Dust, and and George Harrison, All Things Must Pass, and Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, and a million others. And then everyone
No,
brings a potluck
no,
dish.
no highway to hell.
No, there's more heaven. I left hell out of it. But,
Okay,
I encourage the Stairway to Heaven rather than the
right.
Highway to Hell. But I do love AC/DC. And then everyone brings a potluck dish based on a recipe of a loved one, because I feel really close to my mom and my granny when I, bake or cook their recipes. And everyone brings a cocktail or any kind of booze they like. And then in for 3 hours, I just kind of facilitate, what kind of information they're going to need. And I share my personal stories, with my mom's death, with my granny's death, my granny's nursing home experience for a year before she died. And so then I had a good to go party in Dayton, Ohio. Woo, Ohio.
Yeah.
And my dad came, and I learned stuff about my dad that I'd never known my whole life. Like, he said, I wouldn't mind dying outside like the Indians, like the Native Americans. And I was like, who are you? What? I never knew this before.
Can you
And
do that? Is that legal?
I don't think it's legal. But he
Okay.
just said if it was legal, that's what he would want.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And
It must
well,
be an Ohio thing.
I think it's legal to kind of die wherever you want. I don't think there's a question. It's like, what do you want done with the body afterwards?
Well, isn't that what he meant? Like to just like be in the dirt?
No, he meant like, if you're gonna die, like, wheel me outside so I can
Right.
be under the stars, and then I can just go, while I'm
Yeah.
out in nature.
Right. Yes.
And so back to the idea of it's just for your loved ones. That's what I had thought. And my dad filled out his departure file, and we had also gone to the lawyer to get everything sorted. And he was definitely good to go. And what I didn't realize at the time was when he was in the ICU and basically on his deathbed, and I realized the moment that in that moment, like, this is the last time I'm gonna see you or be with you while you're alive. It's an overwhelming moment. And so I just grabbed his hand and I looked at him and I said, everything is taken care of, right? And gosh, makes me emotional, just the peace on his face. And it blew my fucking mind, because I just thought, oh, wait a minute, it's helping me, but it gave you the peace to transition. Like, I truly feel that because he had filled out the departure file and we were rock solid on all of his wishes and what he wanted, it enabled him to go. And that blew my mind, that the company I created out of my mom dying for other people actually, went full circle and helped me.
Right. Yeah.
and helped my dad transition. So it does give you peace. Like once you start kind of addressing it, you do kind of feel like, okay, well, I'm not leaving a mess behind for my people. So I can just focus on what's important. And in my dad's final moments, I wasn't like, Dad, slip me the password for your Wi-Fi, or what do you want done with your car, and where's the car title, where did you put it, or any of that kind of stuff. It was all just love. It allowed the space for love to be in the room instead of chaos.
So, and, of course, there is resistance. What do you think the resistance is? And you've probably dealt with that a decent amount. Have you been able to, like, people don't want to face that they're not mortal, or they're not immortal, or whatever? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think people look at preparedness as prophecy.
right,
And I just say, when you research your car insurance and then you buy it, do you instantly get into a car accident? Like that second, when you talk about sex, do you instantly get pregnant? It's just kind of like, come on. And so I think it's just the fear and uncertainty about death. Nobody knows what happens. I mean, everyone's got their certain beliefs, but nobody really is, 100% rock solid on what happens. And so it's a scary uncertainty, and the unknown is a scary thing. We can't just accept that death isn't a medical event. Death isn't a punishment.
right.
It's just a natural thing that your body goes through. It's just a natural process, like birth.
Yeah, it's clear we don't know what it is, because it's there's a lot of people that talk about the greatness of the afterlife, but none of them are rushing there. None of them are rushing to get there.
So true.
So it's what's funny, and I'm just going to go with it anyways. I'm not trying to be contradictive, but I had never taken a CPR course, and it came up, and I thought, oh, I should take a CPR course. I mean, I'm always in front of these groups of people in all these weird areas. It'd be good information for me to have. And I took that CPR course, and it was a week or two after that, 2 people passed out in my class. And I was like, what the fuck? It was like, August heat wave in Los Angeles, but it freaked me out.
Yeah.
So I have had resistance, and man, that before we started, I'm like, don't go down that dark road. It'd be so easy to go down that dark road and talk about all those, but I'm just going to be free in this, because I reached out to you at one point because I don't want to talk too much about the so-called virus, or the virus, or what, because one of the many things I've realized is there is no place to get actual true information about in the world that we live in. We don't know what the truth is. We don't have a media source that we can actually go to and go, this is the reality. And in the beginning, there was a lot of, the pandemic was a fear pandemic, and that was my biggest problem. And I was very freaked out. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And, I don't have great health insurance, and people are talking about all this, like, they're bringing a boat, and they're going to have people on the boat. And, and I'm like, man, if I end up on that boat, I'm going to be lost forever. I mean, like, my rent's not going to get paid. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my little bit of savings? And so I just thought, well, I'm just give my family my password to my banks and stuff, which you said is actually against the law. Because I reached out to you,
Yeah.
and you said that I should do, a POD, which we'll talk about in a moment. And but I, at one point, like, because I'm like a troubleshooter, and I'm always like, and which isn't a great thing all the time. It's good a lot of times, but I'm like, how do I solve this? How do I solve this? It's really bothering me. And the way I solved it was, I said, you're going to die, and it's going to be, and that'll be that. So accept it, and be okay with it. And when I told myself that, I was able to relax. I just,
Wow.
yeah. So it was very, but it was like very intense for several days. Because I mean, I'm in East Hollywood. There were people like walking on the street with like BB guns and stuff. There were people going door to door dressed as police, robbing people and stuff. And I'm like, this is it. And I don't
Right.
know, I'm like, okay, and I went into total, like, absolute acceptance as far down the line as I could get with it. And I called my family and I said, these are my passwords, just in case, because I didn't think I could go into a bank and do a POD, and
Right.
which is what you told me to do. And POD is paid on death.
Payable
So,
on death.
right. So if you die randomly or whatever, whoever that person is, they have access to your bank account. Is it immediately, or does the bank freeze it and make sure that you don't have debts?
No, it's immediate. It's
Okay.
absolutely immediate. You can either have someone named on, if there's, you live with your partner and you have a joint checking account, as long as there's one other person's name on your account that is living, then it works. It kicks in immediately. And it just takes so much pesky paperwork out of the situation when you're grieving, and it just allows for the ease of transition. Basically, I mean, it's so funny because a year before my dad died, we went to the lawyer to get the will and all of that, power of attorney and all that stuff. And we also went to his bank, and we went in and we sat down, and we got it all sorted, and he listed me as the payable on death. But I somehow, in the chaos of illness, when he was in the hospital in the ICU, it was such a shock and out of the blue, because he just had like regular pneumonia, and it had turned into sepsis, and then it went downhill from there. But in the chaos of illness, I was like, well, how am I going to pay dad's bills? Because I think that, the end of the month is coming up, and so he has to pay rent the first of the month. And if he's going to be in the hospital for a couple weeks, and so then I frantically, left the hospital, went to my dad's, got his checkbook and some bills, and then my ID, and I ran to the bank, and I was like, can you guys just make sure? And they were like, you're his payable on death. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. I'm a genius. I forgot, and they said, all you do is take his check and sign your name. It's totally fine. So I didn't have to submit a certificate and fax this confirmation or whatever. I could literally just open his checkbook and send it in for rent, so it just makes things easier, when you do
Right.
that.
But that being said, you have to go to the bank with the person, right?
No, you can
It
just,
can it can
yeah,
be done remotely?
yeah, you can, like I put one of my best friends, because I'm single and I don't have a husband or kids or anything. And so I put my best friend as POD, and I just walked into Bank of America. She didn't have to be with me.
Oh,
I can't remember. I might have had to give her social security number or whatever, but that was it. It took 5 minutes.
I thought that they had to be with you.
Nope.
That's okay. Good.
No, you just have to have certain personal information, but
Right.
it's best to do not at a window, obviously, because you are doing personal, giving personal information. But if you make an appointment, if you just walk in and say, I need to meet somebody and talk to them about adding a POD, they'll take you back into an office and get it done. It takes 5 minutes. So if
Okay.
anyone, listening is away from their family, and has any amount of money in their bank account, they should always have a POD on their account. And just to let you know that the POD has zero access to your account unless you're dead. So there's no worry of that. That's why I was saying to you, don't give out your passwords because they could go ahead and, do whatever. Not that your family would, of course,
Right. Right.
um, but I had two clients. They were married, and they said, we don't want our 20-year-old son to know that he's got access to our accounts, but we want to put his name on it in case something happens. And I said, put it as a POD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't feel like at that moment I could go to the bank. I don't know if the banks were even closed.
Mm,
I'm not sure.
right.
Is the same thing hold true with like internet banks?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, again, it's like I don't pretend to have all of the answers. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I just share the experiences and the things that came up for me. And so I'm just like passing them on to others, because it'll help them.
Right. Right.
But
What's the
I don't have all the deathy answers, Daniel.
really? Damn it. What's the most important one?
Oh, gosh. I think the most important thing to know, I think, is just that you need to have a conversation with your people. I mean, people can, it takes so much for them to actually sit down and write stuff down. But I say just have the conversation. If you're putting off writing it down and putting your wishes in writing, the more people you tell about your wishes, the better.
Right.
And, just for an example, my mom used to say, just cremate me and stick me in a mayonnaise jar and put me out for trash day.
That's very Ohio, I think.
Wasn't it? Yes. And I was just like, har, 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 and then she actually popped her clogs. And I was like, I'm not reaching for the Hellmann's or the Miracle Whip. I'm not putting my mom in a mayonnaise jar. Like, what the fuck, And so I tell people, tell your loved ones what you would like, and even if it's, I don't care what you do because I'm going to be dead.
Right.
That in itself is an instruction. That in itself is going to relieve so much guilt and uncertainty from your friends,
Yeah.
if you give them the permission to, do whatever you want. I just want to be cremated. And, if every friend of mine wants some ashes, they can do that. Or if you want to, or maybe you have a specific idea of what you want, that kind of thing. Just the communication. I tell people it's not a confrontation, it's a conversation.
Right. What's
Just,
fun? Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, for example, when I went and quarantined with my friend in the desert, the first thing I said to her, she's 15 years younger than me. I said, look, if I get COVID-19, I don't want to be intubated. I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm in the desert, the place that I love. Just let me slide away, And then P.S., don't feel guilty that I died on your watch. And that just, that 30-second conversation of me telling her, I mean, what a gift if something actually did happen to me, and she will be so relieved that we did discuss it and talk about it. And that's what Good to Go is all about. I don't want anyone feeling guilty or living for the rest of their lives with uncertainty over, their deaths or the death of a loved one or that kind of thing. It's just, so I say talk, have a conversation. And if you can't bring yourself to, actually write down your wishes, it's really important to just tell everybody what you want.
Yeah.
When you're healthy.
Right. So this always happens. I have two statements or questions. So statement number one is, well, because we're both from Ohio, but I have clear memories of my father saying, if I die, just put me down the garbage disposal. Doesn't matter. I'm done. So that is very similar to what your mom said, and both Ohio people. I feel like Ohio people are a little bit different, especially the ones that get out.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, but what is our problem with death?
I think that's such a loaded question because it's cultural, it's societal. We don't want to talk about it. I mean, especially in Los Angeles where aging is illegal.
Right.
People don't want to talk about getting older, let alone, having your life end. So I think And also I think, there's a disconnect as well. We have this illusion that we aren't going to die, but I know this amazing life coach named Shelley Wizen, and she says, what's the leading cause of death? Birth.
Right. Yeah, right.
I was thinking like cancer, heart disease, and she was just like birth. And so for some reason we feel like we're the ones, we're the exception, and it's okay at Halloween time to have tombstones, fake tombstones in your lawn, and to have a skeleton hanging from your front door, and to have, whatever, but it's not okay to actually talk about your own death or the death of a loved one,
Because it is very hidden away. We don't
is,
see it.
but I think what death really is hidden away. I think we see death all the time. We see it in slasher movies. I mean, it's okay to see, a group of cheerleaders get slaughtered in the woods, but we can't talk about, what's going to happen if something happens to us. Do we want to be cremated? Do we want a life celebration or a funeral or whatever, and I find that there's a disconnect. Everybody loves these murder mysteries and these, detective series and CSI and all these crime shows. There's death in all of those, but then when you put the mirror back on yourself, it's just kind of like, oh, we don't want to talk about it. We're too afraid to talk about it,
Yeah, I think there's many things in society where people are all, either outwardly watching things or talking about things that they don't themselves actually face or understand. I think there's an enormous amount of that we don't understand ourselves.
Well, even in the spiritual community, I say if you're going to live mindfully and live in the present moment, you need to have a mindfulness about your death, about your mortality.
Right.
I feel like you can't truly live until you make peace or accept that you're going to die. And granted, I don't think an 18-year-old needs to walk around thinking about their own death all the time, but I definitely feel that once you make peace with your own mortality, you appreciate life more. I mean, how was it for you once you kind of just accepted, like, okay, I'm going to die, what was that like to kind of sit with that? And
well, it fixed everything. I was like, okay, well, there's that, because it's like fighting a stream otherwise, it's like, or fighting the river. It's like, you can't fight the river goes that way, if you want it to go the other way, that's a giant problem, so my acceptance of that in that moment was super helpful. And during this time, I had read this book on Buddhism called How to Live Without Fear and Worry, and I started reading chapters on the podcast. And other the third chapter I was reading, I didn't realize when I had read it previous times, because I've read that book several times, how much, well, at least in this book about Buddhism, was about acceptance of death. Like that it's like a source of so many problems, that like we have like some kind of like weird distorted view of reality, and that if we just go to that moment and accept this, which I think is easier said than done, but it's there's a freedom in there, and to me freedom is really important. So yeah, but even having read that book, I still, like, I came to it, it came to me. I was literally laying in my bed, can't sleep. What am I going to do about this? What if they start running in the streets, and the grocery stores are closed, and because like I said, and I blame the media, and it's and the people's reaction, and social media is not bad, but what's put on it, we put what's on social media. It's like, it's not like, it's like an empty slate. If we want to complain about social media, it's like complaining about a painting that's not been painted yet. You get to paint it, right? So if you don't like it, you don't like what the people are painting. But there's a lot of social anxiety and extreme,
Mm.
like, and I couldn't get a sense on reality, on what was really going to happen or not really going to happen. And, are the satellites going to fall out of the sky? And I just had to go to like acceptance in the deepest realm of it, and
Mm.
it was super useful. And I didn't come to it like analytically. I didn't like figure it all out and say this is the answer, go to the it came inside of me.
Mm.
And I said, okay, I don't see a way out. You're gonna die. Okay. Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, yeah. It was earlier, and I remember there was this punk band. I wish I could remember their name. They had an album called "Live Forever or Die Trying," which I thought was great. So,
Well,
yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg duo. Roll me up and smoke me when I die.
Oh, I like their "I'm Not Superman" duo. I have
Yes,
it as
yes.
as a great track, man. What a great song. What a great song.
Mm.
Yeah, Willie. Who would have guessed in a million years that Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg would be uh, joining forces?
Brothers.
Yeah,
Brothers from another mother.
yeah. It's great, It's like those things. Like the artist is such an important uh, lighthouse in
Mm.
humanity, and like for them it's like constant. We're getting all these great messages from the great artists of the world. I want to go, you know, but sometimes the artist is like, there's this comedian, Doug Stanhope.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, and he's always like, he did this. He's like, I've given you all the answers. Why aren't you listening? And that's the funny thing, because it's like, and again, it has to be into this like non-attachment. So
Mm.
like, you can give the information, you can provide the service, you can provide what, the yoga class or whatever. And then what people do with that, if you get attached to that, you can go fucking crazy. Well, it's like, I already told you, but people don't hear, people aren't always ready to hear everything. But if we listen to the artists, they're always giving us the information.
Totally. I mean, it was music that, because I was single and I didn't have any family left, it was definitely music that, parented me when my parents died and friended me when I lost friends in grief, because that's a weird thing that happens sometimes, is you lose really close friends when somebody dies, because they don't know how to fix it. And I found some people I knew didn't know how to handle me if I wasn't my normal, extrovert, funny self. And so they didn't know what to say to make it better. But the thing is, there's nothing you can say. It's not your job to make it better. It's your job just to hold space.
Yeah.
You don't have to fix it. And so people lose a lot of friends. Uh,
During the grieving process.
absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
It's very common. Very common.
Yeah. It's difficult in that position sometimes, where someone is like either an entertainer or someone who stands in front of large groups of people.
Mm.
Like, because I mean, I've been teaching yoga for 15 years, and I've gone through a lot of fucked up shit. I mean, in 15 years, shit's going to happen.
Totally.
It's like, and then but you have to keep showing up and do that gig, and people are like, oh, what's going on, or whatever. It's weird. Um, did you feel like there was times when you didn't feel you could grieve? Is that what you were saying? Like, it was, I mean, you really couldn't control it, but
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing is grief is so crazy making because you have no control over it. You feel again, we've got that illusion of control. You know,
Right,
we're not in control of our bodies. We
right,
have this illusion that we are, but when things conk out, you know, we're like, what happened? You know, and so I thought I'm a reasonable person. I'm not moody. I'm a hippie. I love everybody. I try to, do no intentional harm. That's my motto. But then I found myself so out of control with emotions, and like I'd be at Walgreens and suddenly I'd break down because Charmin toilet paper was on sale and that was my mom's brand, and it
right,
would be so, seemingly dumb and random, but then I realized that, you don't have control, and grief can be so crazy because you don't have control of when you're going to have a big wave of grief. And grief is very contrary. On one hand, my mom died, and so she was my best friend and biggest fan and cheerleader. And so there's the loss of that love on earth. But then the outpouring of my friends' love and strangers' love, strangers who have had their mom die.
right.
I would, if I just decided, like, wherever I went, if anyone asked me what was the matter, or if I'm at Ralph's in line and they're like, how you doing today, I'm just gonna fucking say my mom died. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And I found that when I was just honest, it could be uncomfortable sometimes, but for the most part I had the most beautiful, touching, nutritious interactions with people that helped me, that helped my grief, because I was being human with them and they were human right back, and some of them would just give me a hug. And you know um yeah, it was, I felt like I could grieve, but I didn't have any control over it. But once you make peace with it, when you argue with reality, you will suffer. It's one of my
Right.
favorite phrases. And so, the fact was my mom was dead, and, you have to get used to it. It's very contrary. You feel alone, but then you feel, with everybody, and then you feel angry, but then you feel grateful. And, it's just, it's emotional. It's hard. It's tough, and that's what I wanted to do, is help other people in their grief, just make the process easier. I can't take the pain away, but I can help you conserve your energy
Right. Yeah.
when you're
Because,
experiencing it.
which is very necessary because those emotions are very, it's like, just like short circuiting and all the energy just goes, just gone.
And what is it? I mean, grief has such physical manifestations. I mean, I joke that I just wanted to be carried around like Cleopatra. I had zero energy. I wanted a bed with wheels just to like wheel me everywhere. I mean, just to even wake up and to get up and make a cup of coffee. I mean, it's so hard. And I look back on my journals, of that time, and I keep saying, gosh, when am I going to get my mojo back? Where's my mojo? Where is it? Where is it? And it's
Right.
just like, it eventually comes back, but there's just no timetable.
Emotions are weird. They don't have like a lot of, like, I'm a very logical person.
Right.
And if like you try to like what's the use of this emotion, how does it like make us survive or fit in, and it doesn't. And a lot of times it's like a detriment.
Mm,
um it's, emotions are very weird. And I've spent time thinking about like that. There was some, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast, and there was this guy talking about there may have been a time before emotions, and emotions may not be something in the future. They're like this manifest of like some kind of vibrational energy or something. It's
mm.
um, and it's very weird. And emotions, they turn physical, and we have, on some level we have to deal with them, because if we don't, they will deal with us.
Well, we're living in a time where, it's dealing with us right now.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We don't want to look at systemic racism and or white privilege or anything like that, especially coming from Ohio. And, you bury it down, you bury it down, you bury it down. And, like emotions, it's going to come out sooner or later in some kind of way.
Yeah, plus there's the adrenaline reaching the body through the emotional responses, and it's just like, yeah.
And there's so much anxiety that comes with death as well, because it's kind of like death is such a big existential thing. It's like your brain can't comprehend it, and when you can't comprehend or understand something, like the life force that was in my mom on Monday was not there on Tuesday, but the shell of her body is here, but then the essence of who she is gone. And so how does that go with just your heart stopping? I mean, it's so crazy. And then I got my first panic attack of my entire life after my mom died.
Right.
I was, some of her friends invited me over for dinner, and I was too tired to go, but they were insistent. And so I went. And as we were, as I was putting a noodle in my mouth, it suddenly like hit me like, Mom is dead, and I just wanted to literally just like throw the fork down and run through the streets. I just wanted to just run. And I didn't understand what was happening. I thought I was having a heart attack, but it's just anxiety, because you don't know. My friend actually described it the greatest way. She said, it's like you've got a Rolodex in your mind. Here's an old term, Rolodex, little.
People are like, what's that?
I know. It's just like a little address book or something. And so your mind is like, let me look at the Rolodex of how to react when someone dies. And you go through your entire life experience, and you're looking through, and your brain's like spinning through the cards. And the thing is, there is no card. There is no card to tell you how to experience death. And even when I experienced so much death after my mom died, those were different. Every death is different, whether it's a pet, or every loss is different, whether it's a job or your livelihood or whatever, so it's just, I knew that because I'd never experienced it before, I didn't have the coping skills or tools to help me grieve. So the first call I made was to a grief therapist. It's like, just
Was
give
that
me the
helpful?
instructions.
Was that help?
It was incredibly helpful, mostly just to let me know that I wasn't going crazy,
Right.
and that's always a comfort, when you meet fellow freaks, and
Right.
you know that you're not the only one that's going through this. And I definitely knew I wanted to go through my grieving in as healthy and as a positive way as possible. So I did have an intention in my grief, that really helped. But like you were saying, that freedom, I'm here to say that uh, there can be beauty and truth found in death. There can be beautiful things, beautiful transformative things that can happen to you when someone dies. And I don't think that we're taught that, A, death is just part of life, and B, that we're strong enough to be able to handle it. Because I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but like when my mom died, I was thinking like, well, Princess Diana died, Abraham Lincoln died, like everybody else, everybody's doing it, and they leave behind loved ones, and the world doesn't stop. So here I am in the midst of it.
And that's the great weird thing about it, is like either it was taken away, or we do not have this clear understanding of it, like any kind of, and I don't even want to say coping, like some kind of coping mechanism, because I think it has to do with the way that we framed it, and I could be wrong. I mean, like, did the American Indians like have like such a problem with it? They had the funeral pyres, you would walk out into the woods, and then just, and that was it. Does a dog think, oh, well, we've seen stories of dogs that miss their owners and stuff. But it's this thing that is as, common as anything, but is completely it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's so common, and we have completely no understanding of it, and the feelings of it are can be very frightening and messed up, and it's that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, it's almost like we're taught from birth that we're just put on the face of the earth for commerce. You know what I mean? And I almost feel like if we're just a number, we're not going to learn about what our life could be or what death is like. And, it's the humanity of it all, that I think gets skipped.
Right. I started a yoga class the other day, and I said, we're going to stop buying shit. Like at the end of my life, I don't want to see this big hole full of all this garbage that I owned. It's like, I don't need a new car. My old car works.
Right.
It's like, stop buying shit, man. It's like,
well, I mean, as someone who's cleaned out 3 houses of dead loved ones, I tell my clients, you never see a U-Haul behind a hearse.
right.
And the thing after going through my mom's condo, it's like, what makes up a life? What do you choose to bring with you in this life to every apartment? Like my mom brought her Hawaiian vacation photos from 1978 to every single place that she lived, and or whatever. It's just paper now. Now that she's gone, these photos mean nothing. I don't know any of the people in these photos. I didn't go to Hawaii with her. So, it's just what makes up a life. And it really inspired me to downsize my shit,
Yeah.
And so I went to my dad's garage and I threw away my elementary school report cards and, old yearbooks. I mean, I couldn't remember who those people were anyway. I mean, my memory's the worst. As my mom used to say, I could hide my own Easter eggs. And I thought, well, if I don't know who these people are now, why do I need to bring all of these scrapbooks? I saved every card and every balloon and flower I was given for every birthday. And I was just like, why do I even need this? Yeah, I turned 16, but I'm 49 now. So what does it matter? I had some kind of like shriveled balloon from TGI Fridays, from 1985 or something. I'm like, what? So people clean out their shit, and I even said to my dad, I said, please don't make me clean out your house, after you die. Let's do it together now. And so we put on some 50s music and had a beer and went through his desk and went through stuff. And he looked at me and we had a great time, and made a lot of funny memories. And he said, oh, I can see how you would prefer me being here helping you instead of me being dead. And I'm like, yeah, instead of me laying on the floor crying and having to go through your old bills and shredding them, so but another great thing about my dad is that I knew I was going to have to clear his house out for sale because I didn't want to live in Dayton and didn't want his house. And he had cleaned it out. He had cleaned every single room. He had eliminated his inbox, so I couldn't read his emails. I mean, he had kind of a weird premonition that he was going to die as well, like a month beforehand. And so but yeah, so I encourage people to clean out, especially in lockdown time, if you can go through your stuff and just with kind of a second mind of like, okay, if I was dead, my friends would have to go through this, your sock drawer, your closet, this box or whatever, and just ask yourself, like, again, like that kind of Marie Kondo thing, does it spark joy? Does it, do you have it on display or do you have it, something in a box somewhere? It's just what has meaning. And, death has taught me kind of that everything has meaning and nothing has meaning. So it's very contrary, you know. But I tell people, I'm like, don't judge me on my browser history if I suddenly die out. It is so random and weird, you know, because you do become a detective. Like, what websites were they visiting before they died, you know? And I know.
Jeez. But that's a great message. It's a really good message. It's like all this junk, you know, all this.
Your junk drawer.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I currently have a junk drawer. I've had them for a long time.
Right.
There might be something in the kitchen that has a couple of like broken things.
Yeah, a couple screws, maybe a rubber band.
Right.
You know, but I tell everybody, like, don't overthink it, you guys. Sometimes a potato is just a potato. You know?
I sometimes have the urge just to get rid of everything.
Yeah.
Like everything. Like, I don't want it. You know, these possessions are heavy. They're like too heavy, man. You know?
Well, you know, I've experienced just through my own experience and then also with clients for Good to Go, you know, if you have to go into a home of some sort or some sort of, you know, assisted living facility, you know, you really have to downsize, you know, because you basically live in a room, you know, that's it. And so I just say, especially if there's anyone out there with elderly parents, or if you're a parent, you know, go through your shit. You don't have to save every single pair of socks that your kid wore from birth until 9, you know, or whatever. You know, you can just save one little pair and maybe frame them or whatever. You know, it's just like go through and clean stuff out with your parents, and it creates memories. And you're like, why are you keeping a computer magazine from 1989, you know, and or whatever. And if you know that that the death duties are basically going to fall to you, I say next time you go back to Ohio with your parents, I mean, clean out the basement, check out the garage, you know, and help them. And then if something happens to one of your parents and they do have to downsize, in that stressful moment and that huge abrupt change in life, you don't have to worry about having to, you know, oh, I only have 2 days before I have to get back to LA. We've got to hurry up and clean out this garage. You know, I think it's good to downsize with your family members, you know?
Yeah, my mom had to go to Florida for a cousin that had passed, and her cousin had like a storage facility. Like, and my mom had to get like a dumpster, like a big ass fucking dumpster, you know, and just like there was just this like junk in it, like junk you would buy like at Target or Kmart. There's just like not even like value, like, you know. I think they gave some of it to homeless shelters. They put some of it on the streets to take this if you want. I don't think stuff that people don't even want, like to have a storage facility full of crap that people don't even want for free.
Right,
you know?
right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, that's why I put in the departure file, do you have a storage facility?
Right.
If you do, what's the number? Where's the key? Who's got the key? You know, what's the combination to the lock and all that, you know, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of people that I know in LA have storage spaces. I had one until a couple years ago. Right. And, you know, these are the little bits of information that people need to know that's going to make their lives so much easier. I mean, I feel bad for your mom having to sort your cousin's stuff out.
Yeah, it was very upsetting. But then, and you've dealt with a lot of musicians, so there's an addendum, an extra piece.
An extra booklet, an additional booklet.
Right, because you want to know about, well, that guitar.
Right.
How much is that guitar worth? Is, you know, and because someone might come into your house and be like, oh, he has 5 guitars. They're worth $100 each.
Right.
They don't, you know, it's like, wait a second, this guitar is worth thousands of dollars.
Yeah, this is a Les Paul. And
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
there's only 200 of them made.
I know, right? You're like, no. Well, I mean, I was joking with my musician friend and you know, and his wife, and I was just like, you've got to write your stuff down. And I said, just for example, what do you want done? You know, if you died, and I asked his wife, what would you do with his Rickenbacker? And she was like, I don't know, I'd probably sell it. And he goes, no, not the Rickenbacker. And I said, that's why. You know?
Right.
And so just because I'm a music head, I started thinking of like, yeah, I've got a ton of musicians who aren't Sting or Bono, but who still have publishing deals, who, you know, have tons of musical gear, equipment. Some of them even have like other places that are studios that they rent out. And, you know, and so I started, I asked my friend Pete, who plays drums for Elvis Costello. He was in the Attractions. Now he's in the Imposters. And I said, hey, what happens to your royalties and your publishing and stuff if something happened to you? And he just said, Amy, I don't know. The checks arrive when they arrive. And I was like, well, think of your wife and daughter, you know, and if something happens to you, you know, who are they going to call? Do your royalties continue? If you haven't named someone, when was the last time you signed that contract? And he was like, sometime in the 90s. And I was like, so find out, you know, where the checks are coming from. Talk to, you know, and certain, when you get to a certain level, you can have some sort of manager and those kind of things. But for my everyday peeps that live in LA that, you know, play music, they don't have a list of the instruments they have and the history of their instruments and who owned it before and what, you know, you know, when did they go get it fixed and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, do you want to be a hologram and what do you want done with, you know, your unpublished stuff? You know, I say be more like Bowie, who made his death into a work of art, and be less like Prince, who has this huge back catalog but didn't have a will.
Right.
He almost died a couple weeks before he actually died. And that wasn't enough to wake him up and think, I need to, you know, settle my legacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's go full circle, because I believe that Frank Zappa had a lot of this stuff in place. He had his entire catalog set up. He had actually told his wife, I don't want you to deal with the music business. I've arranged for these people to deal with it. I think she ignored those requests though. But yeah, and he had like all the old masters set up. He had people that maintained it, and it was all, he had that all in place, which is very interesting.
Well, Dolly Parton, everybody loves Dolly. She's actually gone through her back catalog and has re-recorded her vocals and stuff so that after she dies, people, you know, artists can do a duet with her in any kind of style, you know? And I mean, she's like set this up because she's such a smart businesswoman, you know, and she realizes my legacy is going to go on far after, you know, long after I'm done. And so she's actually, you know, taken the time to record, you know, and leave instructions on what she wants done with her, you know, other stuff. But the musician's booklet the advanced planning musician's booklet is just for, you know, music creators and, you know, but it also includes like, you know, who did you loan that amp to that you never got it back and what's their name and, or, you know, those kind of things. And are you estranged from anybody? Does anybody owe you money? You know, because when you're on your deathbed, if that person, a strange person, if they want to come visit you, your loved ones are going to have to figure that out without asking you, you know, if you're incapable of communicating that. So they're going to be like, oh shit, do we invite that person? Do we not? And so that's what I put in the booklet. Like, do you have an estrangement? And if they want to come visit you, is that okay? Or do you want them to be called if something happens to you? And who owes you money and what do you want done with that debt? Or do you owe anybody money? And, you know, those kind of things. So these are just like everyday questions that are going to help your loved ones figure it all out, you know?
Yeah, my goodness. Holy fucking shit.
It's a lot, but you helped me so much as a musician, because I remember when I was writing it and compiling it, I was just like, Daniel, what other stuff did I not think of? And, and so I appreciate all of your help with that too. I mean, would you want to be a hologram?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I really have this feeling for me that when I'm done, it might be nice just to completely vanish. I know that people get real attached to like legacy and like, that their art or their inspiration goes on forever and ever. I remember, again, to Frank Zappa, he says, people will spend a lot of time and a lot of money, and he was talking about Bush, I think, to make sure that their remembrance is just, and he put his hands up, just perfect. He said, I don't care.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like one of his last interviews.
And just that simple statement relieves so much pressure from his loved ones,
Right. Who
and
are
so,
fighting amongst themselves right now over.
yes, and it's heartbreaking. And this is what I tell people too when they're like, "Oh no, I don't want to do advanced planning because I'm not old yet." And I'm just like, "Death, it's not just for seniors." But but I tell them, you think that you've got a close family, but when someone dies, shit gets real and people get weird.
Yeah.
And you know, I experienced that with some of my Jerry Springer relatives that we're not going to talk about. But the bottom line I feel is if a person in your family doesn't have the love, they want the stuff.
Right.
And so that's something to look out for. And if you think you've got the closest family ever and that, you and your sisters are super tight, if you don't have shit written down, you're going to be fighting over mom's, table or mom's ring or whatever, and that's why I tell people, in the departure file, write down what you want done with your belongings, even if it's, I don't care. Or, and then if you've got multiple people, then I say, come up with a system. Okay, I don't want to designate every single one of my belongings. So each sister has to pull a card and high card gets to pick something. And it's just a round robin or whatever, and so I just encourage people to talk about these things. I had clients that were going to be traditionally buried. And then once they talked to their grown daughters about it, they changed their mind because their daughters didn't want them to be buried. They wanted them to be cremated so each daughter could have a little bit of them. And so they changed their mind. And so it's good that you talk about these things. I mean, have you talked to your mom and dad about what they want? Do you know what they want? Do they know what you want?
Well, I bought your file for them and I sent that to them, and they have most of the things pretty much set up. We've talked a little bit about it. And my mom's like, if you want any of my junk now, let me know. She says, like, because especially after she had to rent a dumpster for, her father and then her cousin. And she's just like, geez, my father's mother used to have a label maker. And like someone would say, oh, I like that table. She'd be like, oh, she put in the label maker, your name's on it. And she would do that with everything around the house. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I mean, I had a minor surgery last year, and then I had a freak out on my own mortality, even though I do good to go because I'm human, And I thought, oh shit, if I pop my clogs, people are gonna have to figure out, what goes. And so I went around my place and I put a Post-it note on the back of every single thing of my Paul McCartney autograph. I wrote how I got that autograph and who gets it and their phone number. And, so I went behind everything, on my walls, and I explained where I got it, why I loved it, and who it can go to,
Yeah.
And it just, but then, like you said, it just gives you peace. It just made me feel a little more calm going into the surgery and being like, yeah, it's fine. It'll be fine. I know I'm not leaving a mess behind for, my friends who love me,
Right.
That's the biggest thing, I think.
I feel like I don't have to ask this last question, which I ask a lot of people, but I'm going to ask anyways.
Okay.
What do you want to tell the world?
Ooh, what do I want to tell the world? That they need to talk to their people about their wishes. It's
Right.
They need to discuss hypotheticals. What if I was in the hospital and had a coma or was in a coma and wouldn't be able to talk to you. My feet are always cold. Make sure I have some socks on my feet, or I'm addicted to lip balm. Make sure I got some lip balm on, or whatever. It's these little human things. And it's just so important to have these conversations. And especially now with COVID-19 on the rise again in LA, I say talk to your loved ones about a potential unplanned hospitalization. How do you feel about it? Do you want to be intubated? You know, look into intubation. You know, I did read something like 82% don't come off of a ventilator once they're ventilated, you know, just
Right.
all these things, you know, have these hypotheticals. If I die alone because I'm in the hospital and, you know, COVID-19 is preventing visitors, just know that I love you and our souls are connected. And if you say a prayer for me, or if you share that you love me, I'll get it, you know? So that way, if something did happen and they did die alone, you would have that kind of, not closure, but that comfort knowing that you had talked about it ahead of time. And so when you have these conversations surrounding advanced planning, those are the ones that give you the most nutrition when you're grieving. And those are the things that your loved ones are going to remember, you know?
Right. What's your website?
My website is goodtogopeace.org, and I'm on
PEACE?
PEACE, and as in peace and love. And I'm on all social media at Good to Go Peace. I don't do Twitter and Instagram as much as I should, just because, I don't know, because I have other things to do.
This was very Ringo.
I know, peace and love. There's Ringo. And then also I go live on Facebook every Wednesday for a show called Grievers and Groovers. And we talk about grief, but in a real way, you know, it's just like, what's the weirdest thing that happened to you after someone died? Or what's the funniest story? Or, you know, just all kinds of different things, you know.
That's on the Good to Go Facebook page?
On the Good to Go Facebook page, and that's every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And
is that linked on your website?
It is linked on the website. Everything's linked, and departure files are on for sale on my website, and the musician's booklet is on sale on my website too. And you just click on PayPal, and I'll send it out to you.
Do you want to tell people how much it is?
Yeah, the regular booklets for the departure file, for when I say regular, I mean for non-musicians, but musicians need this booklet too. Right. But that's $100, and then the musician's booklet, I believe, is $60, but I can't remember because I've got COVID brain right now. It's just like, what day is it? Time is irrelevant.
Yeah. I wanted people to know, because people I think, oh, Will, that's expensive, you know, or whatever. So, you know.
And I get that, but like,
but it's important. But $100 isn't expensive, you know. So that's why, and I knew that it was close to that, so I wanted to make sure that you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people it's cheaper than a haircut. It's, you know, about the same as a massage plus a tip. And you know, when my dad died, you know, and I was at the ICU bed, I thought I would pay $1 million trillion to have this departure file booklet filled out. You know what I mean? To have those answers. So yeah. I know it seems like a lot, you know, for something that's abstract, but it's just, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And I refer to my own departure file almost every day because I wrote down all my passwords and I can never remember them. So I go back and check it. You know?
Yeah, fucking passwords.
That's why you got to do it in pencil.
Right. All right, Amy, thank you so much. Let me just do our little sign out here. Thank you, everybody, for coming along to the journey and the story. Please share, please tell your friends about Amy's stuff and this podcast, and share the podcast and subscribe and hit like and all the shit everyone asks you to do. And that's it. Thank you so much. I'm going to hit stop, and then I'll say goodbye to you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.